Hey, everybody, I hope you're doing well. I'd like to welcome to the Audio Programmer Meetup. My name is Josh, and I'm here with our two guests, Nick Culbertson and Prashant Mishra. How's everybody doing today?
Oh, see, I was waiting for the audience to
No, I was
answer.
waiting for you.
That's not good. Okay. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. I've been watching the Audio Programmer for a while now. I got into the Discord for Audio Programmer earlier this year when I was getting into audio development. So this is nice for me because I've been watching all the talks, learning a bunch of stuff, and now hopefully I'll be giving some of that back.
Awesome. How are things going, Prashant?
Yeah, same here. Very excited to be on this platform today. I think for most of us, we started learning audio programming by watching this channel and being able to be present here and share some of the knowledge. I think it's a great moment.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to have you both here. My co-host, Rachel Locke, is taking a little bit of time off at the moment. So it's just myself hosting today. Before we get started, just wanted to let you know about our sponsors, Focusrite and Sonics. They're the sponsors of the Audio Programmer Meetup, and without them, this meetup would not be possible. So thank you to Focusrite and Sonics. Also, wanted to let you know very quickly about a couple really exciting things that are happening at the moment. So if I just share my screen, I will share this one. So one of the first things is that, in case you weren't already aware, we've started off an audio programmer wiki. So as many of you know, we have a Discord where people are sharing information. And one of the things that we found is that sometimes there are common questions that arise, and so we just wanted a place that resided online that allowed people to be able to share information and share some of their insights into audio programming. And so we created this wiki, and I'd like to thank especially Sudara and Nico Pellerin and Evan B for helping out with setting up the wiki. And if you're knowledgeable in audio development and you have some insights that you'd like to share, this would be a fantastic place where I think it would be a great resource for other people that are looking to get into audio programming. So you can join us there on wiki.theaudioprogrammer.com. And yeah, hope to see you there. There are already some interesting articles, and please feel free to share your insights. Also, we have quite a few jobs. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Audio Programmer also has a contracting and recruitment agency where we connect with some of the best audio programming companies in the world, and we help them connect with audio developers. So you can find out some of the jobs that we have available on theaudioprogrammer.com/recruitment. And also next month, I hope that some of you are coming out to London to join us for the Audio Developer Conference. So the Audio Developer Conference has been very influential on my career and on many others as well. The conference is both in person in London and also online. There's a day of workshops on the 14th, and then there are conference days on the 15th and 16th. So I hope that to see some of you either virtually or in person at the Audio Developer Conference. To find out more information and to get your tickets, you can go to audio.dev. And with that, we can just go ahead and start getting into our talks. So the first talk that we're going to have is with our guest, Prashant Mishra. So Prashant has worked as an audio director for educational games and videos with the educational tech brand Baiju's in collaboration with Disney to create IP-specific sonic experiences covering movies such as Frozen, Cars, Toy Story, Lion King, and more. He is now building audio products and with companies like Soundly and hosts games, spatial, and interactive audio training sessions. And what are you going to be talking about today, Prashant?
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. Hi, everyone. So today I'll be covering a little bit about ideating product. How can we approach a problem, and then how can we create solutions uh, uh, in a way that actually helps out users and also brings a lot of teams together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, and specifically with voice and text syncing, right? So in animation, um, I'll let you describe the problem space, but you have to sync how when the word is said and how it actually displays on the screen. So this is a common problem space for video games and animation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Joshua, if you allow me, I'll take it to my through my presentation, so
Yes.
everybody to see.
Yes. Please go for it.
Awesome. All right, hi everyone again. Honored to be sharing the screen with Joshua and Nick. I mean, it's like we learn a lot from different resources, and one of the resources has been AudioKit and the audio programmer community. So glad to be here and presenting this today. So I'll just quickly share my screen so all of you can actually see the presentation that I've prepared, and I hope it's visible now.
Yep. You're all good.
Awesome. So today's session is basically about voice and text sync. And this is basically we'll be talking about a specific use case, but the idea is to talk about the approach itself. Like what happens when you want to start into creating audio products. It can be plugins, it can be small applications, it can be tools that are going to enhance the workflow that you have in your workplace. So we'll get to that. So it's also about automating animation, which is one of the use case that we'll be discussing today. Uh, so just to give some more context about the audience and what you can expect from this session. So if you are a beginner in audio programming or just a programming in general, this session would basically give you that nudge to take your first step, to not be afraid of the technicalities and all the things that you might be assuming, and just go for it. Like just go for your first line of code. If you're already a coder who is building audio applications and writing code for products, this session will help you understand how to approach it with a product mindset. Like a lot of times, what happens is when we are writing code, right? As a developer, we get too much involved into the nitty-gritties of the code itself. Like, what is that algorithm doing? Is it working out as per the CPU usage and the RAM that it's consuming and all that? So how do we make sure that we are also keeping in mind the end use case of the product when we are building it? And if you're already an advanced programmer, there are not there are no tips as such, but it's more of a starting point of discussion, which is about how can we plan a product that involves creative collaboration with different departments, like outside the audio domain. So this is basically the whole context of what and who this session is for. Before I take it forward, a little bit about me. So this is my picture that was taken back in 2015. And I have this website where I post most of the information that I work on. So it's prashantmishra.xyz if you want to check it out. So I've been working as an audio director with an edtech company in India called Byju's. And one of my the latest project was about our collaboration with Disney, where I was working on interactive games and videos for kids for the K3 domain that covered a lot of IPs. And I'm also a Vice certified instructor, and I'm helping anybody who wants to get into the game audio domain or interactive audio domain just to learn and take their first steps. At the same time, I kind of am inclined towards building audio products that can simplify like workflows. And this specific tool that we will discuss in this session is an example of that. And I'm also proud of having done a few proof of concepts for spatial audio for VR. When on YouTube, I think a couple of years back, where the audio actually moves depending on your device. So there are a lot of 360 videos on YouTube, but they more often they just have the stereo audio. And I wanted to explore a way that you can get a game kind of feel where when you move your device, the audio kind of moves along. So that's one of the project that I did, and I'm mentioning it here so that in case you are somebody who's also exploring this domain, I'm open to collaborations. And my most recent project that was launched a couple of months ago was the integration between Soundly and Wise. So I worked with the amazing team at Soundly to create uh, a way for sounds to go from Soundly into Wise. And it's a two-way connect where you can also recall sounds back in Soundly if you want to do some changes. So that's about me. Let's quickly see what we are going to build today. Like what specifically am I referring to when I say creative collaboration or voice and text sync? So I just play out a video here. And this is also kind of a reintroduction to this whole session. Hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. All right. So I hope the audio was audible from my screen.
Yep, all good.
Awesome. So if you notice in this video, as and when the voice is spoken, when the voiceover is played, which is my voice, the text shows up on the screen in sync. Now, what do you think would be an approach to do this kind of animation? Uh, I'll just I think say what I think a lot of people would be thinking, which is you would have somebody who will write a script. That script would then go to a voice artist. The artist would then record the voiceover. It would come back to the audio department. Audio department would probably select the best takes and hand it over to the animator. Now, this can be an animator for movies or technical animators for games who might be using Unity or Unreal or After Effects or whichever application they are using. But the process from animator's point of view would be to then take all the text that is written by the writer, either type it into their application or copy paste. At the same time, import the audio that they receive from the audio department and then do the laborious work of syncing everything word by word. Now, this is kind of more of a hectic work than a creative work. So the idea was, can we automate this? Can we find a way to speed this process? And over the course of the session, I'll explain to you why and from every one's point of view. So let me get back to the presentation here. All right. So what we decided is, if say we have to make an animation like this, what are the different departments who are involved? So the first thing was to understand everybody's point of view. We would have writers and editors who would write the scripts. We would have voice editors who basically edit the audio that we get from the voice artist. There would be animators, and there would be game developers if at all the animators are working in Unity and Unreal. Now let's understand their pain points. Like, why are we even making this? Like, what's the problem that we are trying to solve? And the most important thing that happens for the writers is they don't have the control on text. And I'll explain to you in a small way. So say you are a writer and you have written a dialogue which has to appear on the screen. The animator is either copy pasting it from the document that you might have provided, or they might be typing it manually. In both of these instances, there are chances of error. If while copy pasting they missed out a line or an exclamation point, it can change the whole context of the session often, right? If they are doing a typo, then when the final animation is done, the content or the writer will have to see that animation or play that game and then realize, oh, there was a spelling mistake. Now we'll have to correct it. And that's a whole lengthy process of doing all those changes. There are render times involved. There are a lot of builds that has to be created if it's a game. Now let's come to another point of view. Let's consider the point of view of a voice editor. Now we all know that in audio applications such as RX or whatever DAW you're using, audio department has much more control on zooming into the audio layer. On the other hand, the video department is kind of constrained by their frame rate. So if you have a video that is being worked on at say 25 frames per second, the maximum that you can zoom in a video editing application would be 1/25 of a second. But if you are working in an audio application and you're working at a sample rate of 48,000 samples per second, you have the option to zoom in at 1 over 48,000 of a second, which is much more control, much more clarity. So for the voice editors, they can verify a sync better. They have much more control in terms of millisecond values. From an animator's point of view, the whole process of doing this word by word sync and all that is a very repetitive task. What if there is a way that that can be automated so that the animator can actually focus on the creative bits? What's the color of the animation? Like, can we add some nice glittery particles over that? So they can focus on that instead of having to listen to every word and do that. Other problem that animators would face is the playback. Now we all know in audio applications, you press spacebar, and as long as your CPU supports the plugin chain that you have kept and your DAW does not crash, you will be able to have instantaneous playback. But when it comes to video applications, it takes a bit of time. It has to either create a preview of the render and then play it back, or it's a hassle. Now imagine that you have to wait to press the spacebar or the play button on your software, and then the work that you are doing is actually listening to the sync between an animation and a voice. So uh, all in all, it's much easier work a task for an audio application person versus an animator. Same thing goes for the game developers. The game developers would want a way to simplify the integration. And the fact is, if you're working on a small game, right, the video that I just played has two sentences. So you might be wondering, why do we automate? We just have two sentences, right? But games have thousands of lines of dialogues. Imagine if there is a game which is kind of educational and it wants the reader to read along while the voiceover is being spoken, and they need this highlight and animation to work. It would be a massive amount of work for all the animators to manually sync it. So this is basically the problem that we are trying to solve. And I think let's take a step back before we jump into the code. This is actually the essence of building any product, right? Uh, Whenever we are writing code, we know what we want to create. Sometimes the problem is trivial. So, for example, we might be just finding a way how to access a specific folder in our DAW. In the specific folder that is being used by a particular DAW. Or the challenge can be bigger. For example, how do I create a whole synth or a whole effects plugin itself? So based on the problem, the solution comes in. A lot of times what happens is, as a developer, we tend to think of the problems that are specific to us. For example, in this case, an audio department person thinking about their point of view of selecting the best take and making sure the sync is accurate. That approach can work on a small scale, but when it comes to collaborative projects where you want a lot of people to be interdependent to each other, it's also important to take everyone's point of view. And let's see the solution for this. Now, this is basically the solution that I had worked on with a lot of developers, writers, game designers, and everyone. And I'll just summarize this in a way. Now, we have a text, which is basically the script. This text is sent to the voice artist. The audio is recorded. The audio department basically listens to the audio and takes the text and syncs it using the tool that I'll show you in some time. And once that is done, it basically goes to everyone. So let me just show it to you this in action so it makes more sense. So let's say this was our script, right? Where it says, hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. Now I have this audio recorded beforehand before the session. So I'll just play it for you. And if you notice in this RX session, there are no markers. So basically the text and the voice has not synced yet. So let me just play it back for you quickly. Hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. Right. Now let me run the program that we have written, which basically is written in Python. It asks us for an input folder. The input folder just needs to have two assets. One is the audio file and the other is the text file. The text file is basically the one which has the script in it. And if you just select the input folder and click choose, it should basically run in the background and create a few output files which will have some magic in it. So if I import this file now here, you can see this has all of those words synchronized to each audio bits. So I'll just play the whole audio one more time and then I'll play the few bits. Hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. So now if I click on the word welcome programmer session, everyone products. Yeah. So basically what this code has done is it has gone through the audio file, it has gone through the text file, and it has mapped. This is basically called force text alignment. And this is basically what this tool is providing us, a way to give you the starting and ending points of each word automatically. And I think it hardly took maybe a second. Now imagine the same uh, work to be done by an animator in their software, where they are typing the word or they're typing the whole sentence. They're deciding the first part of the starting part of the sentence, the ending part of the sentence, and then animating it. And also, if they're using the whole sentence as the reference point, the sync will not be accurate because a lot of times we take pauses between words within a sentence, and those flexibilities won't be possible in an animation software. And all of that is possible here. Now, once this file is created, it's basically an RX compatible file, which can then be converted into an After Effects or a Unity compatible file, and it can be used for syncing animation. So let me go back to that graph. In our case, what has happened is we have the text file, all the sync and all is done. We get an RX compatible marker, which basically can be like manually verified just in case it's not 100% accurate. And then that file along with the audio can be sent to the After Effects as well as Unity applications. Now on their end, they will need a way to basically convert this specific text file into After Effects or Unity compatible version, which I'll show in a bit. But let me just quickly show you how this integration works in itself. So basically what happens is the code runs on a Python library which is called NES. So you can actually access it from this website called readbeyond.it/NES. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. But what this library basically does is it does force text alignment. And that's the beauty of using libraries. So what happens is when we are starting out to code, we sometimes think, okay, should I just do something which is very algorithmic? Say, for example, if you're working on DSP, you would either look for math functions that can give you that kind of variation in your audio. And the approach is always in that format. But what happens is, if you explore a bit, you might actually end up finding libraries that already have a lot of research done in the background by a lot of people. And they have made a simplified version, which is possible to just use for application. Which brings me to an interesting topic. Machine learning, AI, has two dimensions. One is the research bit, one is the application bit. A lot of times, most of the people who are just starting out or even intermediate coders don't opt for these formats because they get confused between these two approaches. For an example, let me just play back an audio inside of RX. And Joshua and Nick, if you guys can help me, I'll just play the sound and you can just let me know what you hear. And then I'll do some changes and then you can just say it again what you can listen here. All right, so I'll just play the audio once. Shimmer.
So I hear sh and shimmer.
Yep, exactly. Let me play another audio, which is silence.
Silence.
Yep. So these are two words in which the starting sound is what is different. The shimmer sound starts with the sh sound, the sh sound, and the silence word starts with the s sound. Now, if I just keep the frequency view here, you'll be able to see and observe a difference. The SH sound actually has a lot of frequency content in this frequency range, which is around 1K to somewhere around, say, 6K or something. But the S sound in silence has the higher frequency range. So, this is an observation. Now, what if I try and replicate that the structure of this S sound inside of the word shimmer? Let's try it out. So let's just take the frequency which is in the lower range, which is in the 1K range, and just reduce it a bit. And let's listen to this word again. Shimmer. Are you noticing that it has changed from shimmer to simmer?
Yes, simmer.
Yeah. So this is basically the understanding of audio, understanding of frequencies. Now, when you are getting into machine learning and AI or any kind of audio programming, this could be one of the fields that you are interested in, where the developers want to actually break down audio, how the waveform is built, how the frequency is built, their relationship between each other, and then do research in that domain. And there are also a different category of programmers who would want to utilize this to build something. Now, the NES tool has already done all of this research, and the output that they provide allows us to use just one function and it will do the mapping for us. So, without getting into building something from scratch that requires you to study all this or understand all of these nitty gritties from a research point of view, we can also approach directly the product point of view. So, the gist of the whole discussion here is that all in all, as long as we focus on the problem statement, as long as we have clarity on what we want to build, what we are trying to solve, it becomes much easier for us to look out for resources that will help us solve that rather than worrying about doing it from scratch. And which is why the whole audio community comes into picture. There are a lot of frameworks that actually allow you to do this. And as an example, let me show you exactly how the code that I have written along with another developer friend of mine. Uh, and let me just show you what exactly the function is. So basically, it has a very basic UI just so that whoever is using the application does not have to go into the terminal and write some functions and command and all that. So the process function is what basically gets run. And if you see inside the process function, it basically runs something called batch sync. And inside batch sync, it has another function which creates the text file grid. And all in all, it comes to this specific section, which is the NES tools. Now, as per the documentation on NES's website, what they have suggested is as long as we provide two input values to this framework, which is the audio file and the text file, and the text file needs to be in a specific format, and we let it know what language it is and some of the other information, which is what is mentioned here. Is it a plain text? What is the language? It's currently mentioned as English. So as long as we provide this information, all we have to do is just run this function called execute task dot execute, and this function will do the work for us. Now the output that it will give to us will not be compatible with RX. Obviously, they have not written it specifically for a product, in which case we get to the next topic, which is understanding the markers. So basically what happens is if we are trying to solve a problem that involves different domains, we'll definitely want to do some conversions. So for example, in this specific scenario, we are starting out with a framework, a Python framework that is taking input as audio and TXT files, and it is providing us an output in some specific format. But we want to make sure that that output is usable for us. If it is not going to get imported into RX, or into any other audio application, the audio department cannot do anything. Now, the file that the audio department provides, if that does not enter into After Effects or if it is not compatible with Unity, again, the whole thing breaks. This is where the kind of hack thing works out. So when I was studying the markers for this specific project, I realized that RX has a specific format. It basically generates a TXT file, which has tab-based format, and it has a header. RX10 also has the word lane, the new feature that has come in. Pro Tools basically again exports a TXT file, but it has a specific structure which has this keyword called markers listing, which we can make use of and then smartly do the conversions. I'll show the code in a bit. Say Cubase, Nuendo, and Reaper tend to export the CSV file, and Studio One has also recently provided lyric support in their latest version. Now, this information is useful when we want to make the output from the Python code compatible with our software. So for this, if you see as an example, this is the marker file that basically is exported from Pro Tools. It has this format. It has the markers listing in the start. It mentions the time reference where at which sample the marker is added. And if we have to convert this Pro Tools markers into an RX compatible marker, this is how it looks. So the RX markers format starts with marker file, version, time format, just the 2 lines in the header. And then it right away starts with the actual information, the marker name, the time duration at which it starts, and any information that we had written. So just to clarify, if you see here, it's written as this is a marker comment, and the Pro Tools file also has the same information here in the comments column. This is a marker comment. The idea is, as long as we understand the problem statement, we can figure out everything, all the other bits and pieces in between. If our aim is to make sure that we sync audio and text and make the result accessible for the audio department, for the game developer teams, for the animation teams, we'll have clarity on that aspect, and that's how we'll approach the code. That's how we'll decide what features we want to add into the code and what is too much to worry about. So this is basically a little bit of overview of how this code works. Now, there are multiple use cases of this. One would be games that needs highlights in sync with the dialogue. Any read-along games, there are a lot of applications coming in. Any podcasts that also kind of want to teach students, like the younger students, to learn how to read and how to speak and all that. So a lot of use cases are there for this. Now, before we actually get into the conclusion, let me just summarize the whole thing. Anytime when we build a product, anytime when we have to solve a problem, understanding the problem can often help us define what we want to create. For example, if we are starting out and writing code, most of the times we go so deep into it that we spend a lot of time in bug fixes or CPU resources and all that. But having a clear picture of what we want to achieve can actually help us involve different departments. So anybody who is starting out, I would recommend look out for resources that will help you have a head start. There are libraries available that already have a research done, and you can just use that to solve a problem. If you are an intermediate coder and you are just writing code for a specific algorithm or something, take a step back and see how that plugin or how that application will be used by the user. A lot of time, for example, what happens is we create an application which has too many functionalities and it looks cool to us. We feel proud because we were able to achieve that kind of stability into the app along with all the functionalities. But from a user's point of view, if they are not able to use it in their music creation or their sound design work, it probably needs some iterations. And the third thing, which I think is crucial for the whole industry, is creating applications by involving different departments. So if you're working in a film, we often hear the audio department saying, we were involved only towards the deadline, or we did not get the time to work on this file. And I have heard this from even the most experienced people in the industry. And maybe one way this could be solved, if there are audio applications that are made by keeping audio at the center, but that involves everybody's input. So in this use case that I just talked about, the voice and text sync application that I just talked about, the TXT file actually comes from the writer. It gives the writer the control on the final text that will show up in the video. How? Because there is no copy paste or typing work involved at all. The code takes the text file that came from the writer, automatically syncs it, and that is what gets shown into the final video or in the final game. The audio department has their own control because they were able to do the manual sync and verify that the sync is accurate. The animator is happy because they can finally have the time to focus on the creative bits. And the same goes for the game developer. One small tool, all it does is use a very easy to access framework, which is existing for years now. It's not a new thing. Whatever basically I've shown in this presentation is not new. It already exists. It was just the approach that allowed us to make sure that different departments come together and work in a seamless format. And while doing so, everybody got and built empathy towards each other. The audio department saw the pain that the animation team goes through. The writers understood how sync happens, how a voice take selection works out. They understood how sure sound and the sound actually is the same thing. It's just a little bit of movement of frequencies. And all of it just bridges the whole production together. And that is what my aim has been with this session. It's not about the very basic code that I showcased here. It's more about how do we approach with a mindset of involving and be inclusive of all departments. And in short, we always need to create an application or a function which is a problem solver that takes all the parameters that it requires, does some things, and provides the result. As long as we have clarity on what those results are, in this case, make the process of animating text in sync with voice a little less painful. As we have that clarity, we will immediately understand what the parameters are, and we'll then be able to understand what is that do something bit. And that's when the research starts. Is there a framework that can sync it for us? Oh yes, let's use it. So that's the approach that I hope that you found some insights into it. And I feel that there is a need to embrace new technologies and build creative and collaborative solutions out of it. It has been years when the audio departments, the video tools, they all work in isolation. We know if it's After Effects, it's just video. If it is Pro Tools, it's just audio. So I think there is a time where there can be some bridging applications made that will sync these two. And because the developers have kind of created a master plan that forces all the departments to communicate, it can basically change the way the industry works by keeping the final thing at the center. And before I wrap, I'll just give a food for thought. And this is for people who are a little bit skeptical about this specific thing, like for example, forced text alignment or machine learning or AI, who might be thinking that, okay, this is going to reduce labor. So is it going to take over human beings? There are different opinions on that. So just a food for thought. When analog gear started showing up, before then, the music did not have arpeggiators, right? There were no fast running arpeggiator going on in music. Because there were analog synthesizers created that had those switches and those electricity paths, it was possible. And that's how we know bands like Daft Punk and lot of artists showed up. Same thing happened when the digital audio came into picture. There was a lot of backlash between the analog sound lovers and the digital haters. And there was a mixed view of acceptance of the digital domain. And there were valid points given that digital audio does not sound as good as analog. And it was true back then. And the reasons were the processing power of the CPU was not good enough. But over the years, the digital audio has provided much more jobs, provided much more work that even allows a kid who is probably just starting out in college to use their laptop and make hit songs, which was not possible if they had to rely on a label to provide them the funds to go to a studio which has analog gear. And I think the same also happens with machine learning, with tools like Force Text Sync. They are here to assist us, and it's up to us how we want to utilize them to create whatever we want to create. So, the main food for thought that I gave this whole speech for is the form factor of a technology often decides what the artists create. And with that, I would say thank you.
Thank you very much, Prashant. That was a very well-informed talk and a lot of fun. So I had a question. One question that I had was that it sounds like this is one approach of a series of possible approaches to this type of problem. And I'm wondering if you've seen, when you propose this type of approach, if you've seen a lot of people, the response from people feeling like this makes sense, or have you seen opposition to this type of approach? And if so, why?
Okay, so I think in this specific application, there was a little bit of backlash in terms of if it is possible, like because it was not done before, especially in the use case that I was implementing it in. So there was a little bit of backlash in terms of that. But everybody who was involved in the process, right? The writers, the game developers, and the animators, they were kind of on board with it because they understood the value it brings. So it was less of friction and more of like acceptance.
And I noticed that in your animation, that the animation itself was per word. I was wondering how much more difficult or challenging do you find it to synchronize actual syllables in the words rather than just the words themselves?
I think often like what happens when we read is that we see the words as images. Like that's why when a kid is starting to learn, they kind of go letter by letter, Letter, and then they say letter. But for adults, we are able to see it as an image, and we immediately know what it sounds. So, from a reading point of view and from a user experience point of view, uh, syllable level sync, I did not feel it was relevant. But I'm pretty sure, like with the right tools, it would be possible that if it is SH, we are able to just sync specifically to the syllable and the phoneme rather than the whole word. So
Got it.
yeah, but I mean, from a user experience point of view, in this specific case, it was not required. But I get your point. It's definitely possible.
Okay. Um, Jean Rene asks, may I ask what you studied and how you transitioned to your current position at Soundly?
Okay. All right. So that's a question I did not expect. I basically, I mean, have been working as the sound designer, music composer, and then transitioning into audio director. And what I realized over the years is I like to create something that will be used by somebody else to then create an art. And that's a whole amazing experience. That it's a brilliant feeling when you make, for example, and I think Nick will and Joshua, I think both of you will also agree that when you create a effect, right, a very basic effect, like just a distortion effect, and you hear that a band used your effect plugin in their song, I feel it's much more better feeling than having to create that song itself. I mean, if that makes sense at all. So that is where I got inclined, and then I learned a lot. I did self-learning, and I used platforms like the Audio Programmer community, the Discord channels, and a little bit of. I kind of always had the approach of product first, coding second, and that kind of I think helped me to get involved with some amazing people all over the world. So yeah, if you needed some suggestion on that, I would suggest like find your area of interest, what specifically you want to build, and you will kind of find a way to find resources to learn. And there's always a Discord server from audio programmer community that you can always ask in very simple questions. And believe me, nobody judges. Nobody will think like what basic question you're asking. Everybody is very open to giving you feedback. So I would just say take your first step. Like don't hold back.
Amazing. And can you talk a little bit about your current role? So what do you do for Soundly? What there was another question that asked if there was like a game in particular that you're working on or a project in particular that you're able to talk about.
Yeah, I think I can talk about things that are already released. So I worked about, like I mentioned, on the integration between Wise and Soundly. So that is one of the domain that I worked, and there are a few more projects that are going on in the background, which I think over the time when it releases, we'll get to know. But at the same time, I also kind of do consultation for different audio companies who are starting out and they are building their own products, to just nudge them into selecting the right platform, for example, right, use the right framework, use the right backend, not to make mistakes that I kind of have made in my journey. So yeah.
Amazing. So that looks like all of our questions from the audience. Thank you very much, Prashant.
Awesome.
Fantastic talk, and I know a lot of people will find that really useful. So thank you very much. And before we continue on, just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to give a talk on the Audio Programmer Meetup, you're able to. So we're always asking for people to submit presentations that they may be interested in giving and showing other people in the audio programmer community what you've been up to and some of your perspectives on audio software development. And you can find out information on that if you go to theaudioprogrammer.com/submit. You can submit a proposal, and we'd love to hear your ideas and see if it's something that would fit with what we're working on. And with that, we will go ahead and segue into our next talk.